honestly, one of the things that I've learned from being a band leader is that I've stopped picking apart things and taking away the joy of the whole, you know,
Right,
because
right, right.
you do something, you put the energy, you deliver the music, you're on a sort of a high, people are on kind of a high, and
Oh,
they're
right
coming up,
after the performance.
yeah,
And
right
yeah,
after. And if someone comes to you and says, well, this song was my favorite, it's amazing, the first thing you think of is, yeah, well, I screwed up the bridge. Like,
right, right, right,
it takes something away from both of you, you know, if that's where you go. So I've
right,
just
right,
kind
right.
of learned to be happy about the whole thing and not pick apart the details. So,
One of the topics that you brought up was emotional intelligence.
yeah.
So why is that important? What is it? How can it be developed? Give me some background here.
So the 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 subject of emotional intelligence really sort of came to the fore based on a book in 1995 by a Harvard psychologist named Dan Goleman. And he did a lot of research, and ever since then, it's been a big topic of study in leadership circles. One of the really fascinating things that you find is kind of a fun exercise. I did it when I was at Georgetown, is if you get almost any group of people and you give them like post-it notes, like say 4 different colored post-it notes. And one of them you say, write down the name of the smartest leader you've ever worked with. Write down the name of the strongest. Write down the name of the most innovative. You know, write down the name of the most available, the
Right,
most accessible, the most, you know, those kinds of things. And then you put them up, you have them put the stickies up on the board and just mark like this is the rank them 1 to 4, like who's of those categories, like which leader is the one that you most admire, most remember. It's always the leader that brings emotional intelligence to the table. It's not the smartest leader, it's the guy that really shows those qualities of sort of natural authenticity and self-awareness. And so a lot of the literature now suggests that emotional intelligence, or sometimes people call it EQ, emotional quotient, is more important than IQ. So there are lots of schools of thought on this, and there's lots of coursework and lots of books that you can read about it. But it's considered that great leaders always have great levels of emotional intelligence. And again, just like anything, it's one of those things that you may or may not be born with that skill set,
right.
but it's something that you can acquire. So part of the adventure of growing in leadership is, you know, backfilling areas where maybe you're weak. And so emotional intelligence is something that we look for and that we spend a lot of time on in coaching. And, you know, Goleman talks about sort of the 5 essential elements of emotional intelligence. I'm going to grab my cheat sheet so I don't skip one,
Good,
but
good, good.
there's sort of self-awareness, which I mentioned, which is, you know, how do you show up? There's self-regulation, which is a great one because it's how do you handle it when you're triggered? It's cool, right? Yeah, I laugh about it too because we talk about amygdala hijacks, which
Oh
is
yeah.
literally this legacy of your
Get out
lizard
of my
brain,
lizard brain, man.
right? So when someone hits your lizard brain, like, are you going to punch them in the nose? Are you going to flee? Or are you going to take a few beats, take a few breaths, and sort of take stock of where you are and say, yeah, I can handle this. I can choose to react differently.
Mm.
Then there's sort of motivation, which is showing your employees how the work is done and leading by example, right? Then the fourth one's pretty obvious to people, which is empathy. Can you stand in another person's shoes? Can you put aside your own feelings and self-interest and sort of be with somebody else where they are? And then the last of the 5 pillars is social skills. You got to be able to communicate. You know, there's that old adage that you tell them what you're going to say, you say it, and then you tell them what you said. right? You can't really over communicate.
Mm.
So those are the essential 5 pillars of emotional intelligence, and it's something that we all can get better at. And the better we are at it, the better leader we become.
Okay, so I'll go to middle school, because
Yeah.
middle school is the worst of human behavior that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
My favorite teachers were understanding. They were tough, but they were fair.
Yes.
And there were other teachers who were accommodating and sensitive, but man, did they get chewed up by kids that knew how to talk smack and be a clown. And so, I guess maybe the word emotional intelligence, they're kind of contrast to each other. But so talk about what emotional intelligence is not. Like, where are the misconceptions around emotional intelligence?
Wow. I think, well, you've actually put your finger on a really good example there, because I think especially for us guys, some of us are squeamish about emotional intelligence because we think it's squeamish, right? We think
Right.
it's hippy dippy, soft, it's huggy, it's touchy, it's, let's be all emotional. That's not what it is. So in your example, so the teacher that was tough but fair was someone who was authentic, and you received them as authentic, right? They were there for you. They communicated with you. He or she communicated with you. When there was stress, he or she probably named it and said, yeah, we're really going to struggle here, right? That's emotional intelligence. That's not easy. That might be really hard, but that's showing up and being true and connecting with people. The whole, someone comes to you in crisis and you pat them on the back and you say, well, here's the silver lining in it. That's not emotional intelligence.
Mm.
The first thing that an emotionally intelligent person says, I'm with you. You're really hurting. I see that. I'm so sorry.
Mm.
What can I do? What can I do for you? It's not, oh, they're there. This good thing is going to come out of this trauma. That's not emotionally intelligent. So that's a tough question. Hopefully I gave you some kind of a useful answer.
Would they teach
It's
emotion?
not the soft skills, it's more than that.
Okay, let's go to something like OCS. Let's go to West Point. Let's go to the extremes of human condition, like having to send people into harm's way. Would they teach emotional intelligence at the military academies? Would they teach it at OCS, Officer Candidate School?
So yes,
Okay.
before
Yeah.
95 under a different name, but now
Yep.
it's very much part of leadership. And West Point is one of the great leadership schools in the world, for sure.
Right.
And when you're leading teams, there's a different set of challenges, because you kind of you can't just replicate emotional intelligence. You've got to create an experience that now at the team level.
Right.
To do that, you need a ringleader, right? You need a team leader who's aware, for like those 5 pillars you talked about, is bringing that kind of awareness. You need a team leader who recognizes the individual strengths of the members of the team and is not threatened by that. In fact, can harness it and put that to work. You need a team leader who has vision, who sparks passion, right? You need a team leader, just like we described, who can manage the stress, who can name it, like, hey guys, we're in a tough spot here, but here's how we're going to get through it. And then that same great team leader gives a moment for everybody in the team to give their input and to test how they're showing up, but also to learn from them and bring that to the problem. And so those are the kinds of things that bring emotional intelligence to teams. And I'm a Duke guy. Coach K went to West Point, and he's written a lot of books about this, and he talks about that. Bringing those kind of qualities to the table.
So if we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and understand our own sort of starting point, we have to understand where the deficiencies are. We have to be able to identify them, and we want to understand how to remediate them. And you're confident that this is something that can be done. People can understand. Yeah. Okay.
I am. Again, in so much of leadership coaching, it starts with self-awareness. Are you really willing to look deep into yourself? Are you really willing to be honest? And when you take the time to reflect on your emotions, and instead of just have the amygdala hijack, you choose how you're going to respond to stress and to triggers, you're going to be more emotionally intelligent. When you can learn to pause and ask for others' perspectives and just give a little space for other people to step in, that's more emotionally intelligent.
I think in our space, we like to be right all the time, right? We're deeply technical people,
yeah.
and there's this challenge of being right.
Yes.
And it's hard to let go of that.
It's very hard to let go of it, and it's both a challenge and a trap, isn't it? I mean, what a burden to have the answer all the time.
But that's what pays our bills, right? To people ask us, how do we do things? We tell them how to do it, and we figure it out. We're the technical people, but it sounds like what you're describing is something that doesn't have a binary yes, no. Like you're trying to listen to subtle cues.
It's very subtle, and it takes practice. I mean, it does come naturally for some people. For most of us, it does not. Yeah. But it's interesting from the technical and the consultant point of view. I mean, we are very competent people, and we get paid by the project, or if you're a lawyer, by the hour, or even by the quarter of an hour. And so that sense of being the answer machine is
right.
important for selling and marketing and all of that. But I think it has its limits, right? If you reach that moment with a client where you've already proven, they generally wouldn't even be on the phone with you if they didn't think you were competent and had something to bring to the table, right? But if you get to that moment where it's just like, you're just generating answer, and you're getting to the point where you're just sort of making stuff up, it's much more authentic to say, well, we've gotten to the end of what I actually know about this. I can give you my gut sense of what's happening next, but I probably need to think more about this offline and get back to you.
Okay.
People don't receive that as weakness. They receive that as authenticity, right?
Okay.
And that builds up this same type of EI chops that we're talking about.
Thanks, Randy.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
Let's try to chat again next week. We'll pick another topic.
Look forward to it.
All
yeah.
Right, take care.